speaking of being careful, Tom Brady apparently has got to be careful when it comes to how he calls games, if he's approved to be the owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. So apparently there were some restrictions that were put in place if everything gets approved.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If he ends up getting an ownership stake, he will not be calling games for Fox, I don't think. There's too many restrictions, and it would be extremely difficult to do that job. Damn. I mean, unless you have to look at it from both sides of this. So if you want to be involved as a minority owner, I would imagine that you would want to take advantage of and getting all the potential information you could. And especially if you're Tom Brady and you're maybe angling to be the majority owner at some point in the future. So if that's the case, you'd want to be pretty intricately involved in the organization, its inner workings, how the business is running, how the team is being run, all of that. And you'd have to sacrifice all of that in order to still do broadcasting. So I think there'll be a fork in the road at the time at which he gets approved to become a minority owner in the NFL. And at that point, he'll have to make a decision because I don't think you can do both.
He can't be in the meetings during the week. He can't, when it comes to criticizing officials, he can't go over the top, but I don't know where that line is to where you can't publicly criticize him because you'll be subject to fines.
I mean, it's kind of like that anyway, honestly. You can be publicly subject to fines. That's part of it. But, as a broadcaster, we're always coached by Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino. Hey, these guys are out there doing, it's a thankless job. 95% of the time, they're getting it right. It's the 5% that we catch and that we make a big deal about and say all these guys stink, where you tend to forget they're running hundreds of plays, throughout the course of a game. And then they're getting most of those right, the vast majority of them. So that's not as big of an issue. It's just it's the insider information that he would have on Las Vegas, the wall that I think would be put up by other teams and franchises, especially within the division. Teams are going to play twice a year. I don't think it will allow him to do both. I understand they're trying to create this idea. There's a path forward. And Seth Wickersham kind of tries to lay that out. He also tried to lay out the departure of Brady for 6 or 7 years, and that didn't happen. So we'll see when this all comes together. But I think there'll come a decision that Tom Brady has to make if and when he's approved for ownership.
Is there any way possible that it could play out where he's able to do both? I just feel like if he made the decision with the amount of money that has been disclosed, the amount of investment of time that he's put into wanting to be a successful commentator or, game color call. What are they called again?
Color commentator.
Color analyst.
Yeah.
Color analyst.
Okay.
Yeah.
Color analyst. If he's put in all that time, he's had to have known what the process is from a very intimate standpoint in terms of getting approved for this minority stake. Why waste your time? Why not just wait?
You guys have both called games, so you know what these meetings are like during the week with teams. So is it possible, in your experience, to be able to call games without the access that Tom Brady's going to have if he was the owner?
Yes, it's possible. I would actually be willing to say it's 85% of what you're going to talk about is not coming from those conversations with the teams. But that being said, 85% of your preparation through film, through analyzing the data or the statistics, ultimately could get thrown out. And that's because the game could take an entirely different direction. And so that last 15% that you got from the interviews with players and coaches on both teams now becomes crucial because of a lot of what they talk about will end up providing insight into why things aren't going the way they are or why they're going the way they are maybe for one team. And obviously, anecdotally, other things that will come along that you had in those conversations. So that's the hardest part about calling games is you can be as prepared as you want to be. And for example, I don't know who called the Jets opening season game last year, but imagine all the prep you had putting in about Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, in the offseason and everything else. And, all the stuff you had going through the offseason, with the Jets leading up to that moment. And that is thrown out the window. Graphics, elements that you're going to play. Everything.
That was Monday Night Football.
Thrown out the window. Yeah. So there you go. So Troy and obviously Joe Buck are like, all right, plan B. But even everyone behind the scene, all the works they put in, all that goes out the window. And it's an entirely new story. And now you're covering that story. The emotions of the players and the team and Rodgers, everything else. So that's, in a nutshell, essentially how it works. And that's why, again, I go back to, from everything that I have heard and been told, he will have to make a decision at that point.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, I know. When I did my meetings, they don't disclose anything to you. The point of it all is, let's be clear. Someone like Tom Brady, whoever it is he has relationships with, which is like kind of goes for, I would assume, all of us, right? Whoever we have relationships with, we can get more intimate information. But if you don't know anybody or there's no type of tie or connection there, or even just a mutual respect for one another when you get onto the interview call, or if it's in person, they're just going to keep it pretty basic to what it is. And they may interact with you differently because they know who you are, or like I said, there's the respect of who you are, and there's that mutual respect. But it's not like, maybe it's different for Tom Brady. I don't know, but I would assume that they're going to handle things the same way and keep it above board and not go down the lane of giving too much, back information. Like if there's, like I recall, Myles Garrett had just had one of those like kind of come to Jesus moments with the team when they were going into that Detroit game. That stood out to me. We got Myles Garrett on. We talked about it, talked to the defensive coordinator about it, and it was just kind of talked about in a way where that's how it would be discussed. Not discussed in a way where it gives things away. It just, I don't know. I just don't think – I don't see how it creates such a conflict of interest for Tom Brady if he just kind of remains above board. Like what type of information would he get would be damning to or a conflict to him, being an owner. Like all he has to do is stay away from asking any type of inappropriate questions, I would think. But that's just, I don't know. It's just how I just don't see how he could create. What is he going to ask? Like what information is he going to ascertain that's going to lead to it being a conflict?
Injury information. It's obviously one of the biggest things that, even though there's injury reports, there's enough vagueness that, he might know guys who, this happened in New England. Guys who are on the injury report that are going to be fine, right? That may be questionable, or however they, label them. There might be some guys that, game day decision, they'll see when they got, and he knows they're going to play. That's the biggest thing, obviously, that swings, betting throughout the course of every week, every game. And that's obviously something that is huge from an NFL standpoint, from a matchup standpoint. So it's the injury information that would be the biggest conflict of interest, which, as a broadcaster, you deal with it as it comes. But if you're on the inside and for the Raiders and, you're against a divisional opponent, that makes it a little more difficult. And that's the hard part, is that's only one piece of it. There could be some other inner workings, whether it's, things he knows that are going on in the roster and negotiations or trades. It depends on, again, how deep he would be involved with the Raiders organization in order to one day, you'd think, want to be majority owner. And I assume he would want to be intricately involved as a majority owner. I don't think he'd be a guy who's like, hey, I own the Raiders, but I'm not going to be around.